Oh, so that's how they draw false ceilings, by teaming up to form a human compass.
Okay, now we're trying to calibrate the curvature and it happens to look like the many rings of Saturn. Maybe we should do an astronomy themed home. Hey everyone, welcome back! We are in week 5 of our home renovation. We'll say we are about 1/3 through our renovation process.
And if you haven't watched our previous episodes, do remember to check them out. We are always happy to read all your comments and especially heartened when you share that the videos were useful to you.
Yes, it is our goal not only to document down our Reno journey but also to share learning points, help lower information asymmetry, and promote transparency in the complex Reno industry so that future homeowners can better plan for their home and ask better questions.
And hopefully over time, contribute to upskilling, increasing work quality and level of standards for IDs and contractors. Do continue to keep the feedback and suggestions coming. We'll also be announcing the winner of our first giveaway at the end of this video. But don't skip to the end, we still got many tips to share.
The first tip for ceiling works is about the curtain pelmet. You'll need to plan for your curtains prior to discussions with the plaster seal team. For us, we have 2 smart motors and tracks, so the curtain experts from MGL came down to measure and advise us how much room is required for the motors so that our pelmets can be planned around them.
The plaster seal team came down several times. First trip was for planning and discussions. It was enlightening because they were really seasoned and understood our requirements and Swagu language.
The second trip was to lay some groundwork for the ceilings and structures. This was an interesting day because we always wondered how curved false ceilings were done, like who and how will they draw perfect curves, will they use lasers or a giant compass.
And the mystery was solved. It may look very silly, but hey, whatever works.
This really reminds me of our EMATS or AMATS days when we need to draw loci and circles.
The Plasterseal team will return after aircon trunking is completed. This is helpful and you'll see why later in the episode and the next.
We got to admit that as first-time homeowners, we never really understood how aircon works until now. In fact, some of you might even think that the air is sucked in by the compressor outside. I know Lynn does.
Hey, not just me You're the one who told me there's probably a dead rat in the pipe wherever the aircon is smelly.
Anyway, let's demystify aircon trunking now. If you're an engineer or someone sciencey, you may want to skip this part of the video because it is overly simplified for fellow swakus and may not be technically sound. Basically, aircons operate in a closed loop system using refrigerants. Refrigerants undergo a repeated phase transition from liquid to gas and back again. R32 is the latest gen and is the least environmentally degrading option. So there are two polar opposites in an aircon system, commonly known as a compressor and the fan coil units. One, as its name suggests, compresses, while the other expands. One condenses while the other evaporates, so complete opposites.
When refrigerants enter the fan coil unit from the small copper pipes, they are in a high pressure liquid state. They pass through a tight valve which expands the liquid upon release, just like an aerosol spray can. If you realize when you spray, the can becomes colder, right? Because pressure decrease and temperature decrease. Same logic happens in the fan coil unit.
When warmer air is sucked in from the room, it glides past the cold copper pipes. The liquid refrigerants, which have a low boiling point, absorbs the heat from the air and evaporates into a gaseous form. Heat is transferred and thus cold air is now circulated out from the fan coil unit.
The gaseous refrigerants now move back to the compressor through the fat copper pipes. The compressor compresses them back into liquid form. When that happens, pressure increases and temperature increases, opposite from what happened in the expansion valve.
So what happens to all that heat? A fan circulates cooler air from the surroundings, which glides past the warmer copper pipes, causing the gaseous refrigerants to cool and condense back into a liquid. The heat is then transferred to the surrounding air. The liquid refrigerant then heads back towards the fan coil units, completing this closed loop. So yes, the only thing that moves in this loop is really just the refrigerants. Air remains separated either outdoors or indoors.
So you might wonder, what about the water? Where does the water come from? As air contains water vapor, especially in humid places like Singapore, when the air glides past the very cold coils, water vapor will condense into water. The water is collected in a drain pan and directed along the pipes to be discharged at the bathroom.
And the biggest question is, why do aircons leak? There are two main reasons. Firstly, due to bad angling of drain pipes, water may gather and bacterial growth will create a jelly-like substance that chokes the drain pipes. When water cannot flow, it will then leak out from the fan coil units. This can be resolved by using a vacuum at the drain pipe exit to suck out all the jelly on a regular basis.
The other way that you may encounter a leak is along the trunking. As the thicker copper pipe is cold, condensates may form on the copper pipes, and this is why good quality insulation and installation is important. This is also the reason why boxing up to conceal the PVC trunking is not everyone's cup of tea, as you may have to deal with potential condensate issues in the future when the aircon system is older.
Let's dissect how the insides of the aircon trunking looks like. Every fan coil unit will be attached with one thin copper pipe, one fat copper pipe, one drain pipe, and one electrical wiring. By right, each of the pipes will be separately insulated. We have heard that there are shoddy aircon contractors who may take the easy way out by insulating the thin and fat copper pipes together. That is not ideal due to the heat difference.
At first we got puzzled because we thought we saw separate insulation, but when they left, we took a look at the visible trunking and saw thin and fat copper pipes being insulated together. We clarified with the aircon contractor, who explained that the copper pipes are indeed insulated separately and only at the ending that they have to group them up to fit nicely and connect with the fan coil system. The easiest way is actually to take a look outside your compressor. For system 4, which has 4 fan coil units, you should see 8 separate insulated pipes leading towards the compressor.
Oh yes, we bought our aircon system from Audio House, and like most retailers, you'll be given an option to either do the full installation, meaning trunking and units in one trip, or split them up into 2 separate trips, which requires an additional $100 plus. We have decided not to do the full aircon installation in one trip, because you wanted the house to be painted and cleaned first.
It turned out to be a great decision because the team came early in the morning and had more time to do the trunking meticulously with no time pressure. Just the trunking alone took them one full day and their work ended at 6 PM plus. We can't imagine if we packed in the installation of units on the same day itself. Surely some compromises would have been made from a work quality standpoint.
Our installation will be covered in a later episode chronologically, but here are some snippets from the future which further affirms our understanding of how aircon piping works. This is how the 8 pipes are connected to the compressor, and this is how the 2 pipes are attached to each fan coil unit. You will also notice that space is really limited due to the nuts and bolts, and even the fan coil unit itself comes equipped with the copper pipes grouped together.
You may also hear the term upgraded material quite often. Gain City is one of those who have excellent FOMO-centric marketing tactics. If you kiasu, you can bring this criteria to check with your aircon retailer.
We also took a look on site on trunking day to confirm our understanding. Most importantly to us were the bigger 16mm drain pipes to reduce clogging risk, and thicker class 0 Armaflex insulation to reduce heat gain and heat loss.
You may also get confused with the word BTU and how to estimate what's optimal for each room. Firstly, we need to know the floor area for each of the rooms. The easiest way is to use PowerPoint. Simply load your floor plan, using a scale of 1 cm line to 1 meter on the floor plan, place the line on the slide and hold down the shift key to resize the floor plan until it matches the scale. Thirdly, add a box to cover neatly over the floor plan. You can see the length and breadth of the box, do a simple multiplication to get square meters, and repeat this until you have covered the entire floor plan. Next, sum up the floor area by room. Now, for some magic numbers, don't ask me why, but just divide the number by 5 to get the number in kilowatts. Multiply that with another magic number 3412 and you will get BTU per hour. This is the answer to roughly how much BTU plus minus the particular room commands. Ideally, you should get a fan coil unit that agak-agak corresponds to this number. The master room is a good example on screen, 9K and 9K. If you have an open kitchen like ours, you will need to count properly as well. In our case, we are going with a 24K unit installed at the dining area.
Placement of the units are important as well, but for BTOs with little layout modification, it is quite straightforward. The key decision for us was whether to put the 24K in the dining or living area. But even that we decided quite fast, partly with advice from family and friends with similar BTO layout. The dining area is a better option for our System 4 because the air current can flow to both the dining and living areas, and we even tested it out at one of our family's home. If we install the unit on the living room beam, the dining room will become its blind spot. As to know how many fan coil units can be turned on at the same time, simply look at the compressor specs and compare it by adding up the BTU number in different room permutations. For example, ours is a 33K BTU compressor, which means that all 3 9K units should be able to run at the same time. 9 times 3 equals to 27K. Alternatively, we can run the 24K and 1 9K unit, which nicely add up to 33K BTU. If you have a large home or a large family which requires more units running at the same time, you can consider opting for 2 separate system configurations, which means 2 compressors. And now we'll run through with you how our aircon trunking looks like. So starting from the aircon latch, the compressor will be located there. The very first thin copper pipe goes through the master bath towards the 24K BTU aircon unit in the dining area, and out comes the fat copper pipe. For the next aircon unit, it also passes through the same master bath. This time round, it cuts through the entryway for the master room towards our archway, which connects the sleeping room and the walk-in wardrobe. And then that is where our first 9K unit will be located at, and out comes the fat copper pipe. The same thing happens with the other units, so one in the sleeping room, out comes the fat pipe, another thin pipe goes towards the study room, onto another 9K unit, and out comes the fat copper pipe. So you'll notice that there's actually 2 key areas where all the pipes will gather, which is this area above the master room door frame, as well as the sides leading to the master bathroom. So there you will see 8 pipes, 4 fats and 4 thin pipes going through this same path, and like we mentioned earlier, all 8 copper pipes that are insulated will eventually reach the aircon latch. Water is not part of the closed loop system and just happens to be a side effect caused by humid air. Aircon is like a dehumidifier, and that's why your parents always ask you to drink water before you sleep. Water condensates are collected and drained off in a drain pipe network with only one single output at your floor trap.